Hello, welcome to Win Some Lose More. I'm Dieter, and I'm joined again by my brother Rick, and we are working through our top 100 games. We're just over, well, we're finishing off the top third, I suppose, today, working through 70 through 61. There's a couple of big names today, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's getting that way, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
We've knocked a couple of big things, but we're getting into the realms where those names will start appearing, and we'll see how they settle for us individually. But let's jump in. What's your 70?
My 70, I think you mentioned a few decades ago, and that is Dixit. It's very much like a game that we grew up with called Boulder Dash, where one person announces a word and everyone else has to guess what that word is. This is different. This is more the pictorial version of Boulder Dash. Someone has a hand of abstract pictures. They pick one and they but instead of showing everyone, they describe it with a word or a phrase, and then everyone else has to find a picture that they think best matches that word or phrase. There's a scoring system involving rabbits that I've never quite understood, but it's just a fun exercise. It's not a lot of game in there, but it's great to see what people come up with, either very imaginative or not very imaginative. And it's one of those interesting games where you want some people to guess it, but not everyone to guess it, but not no one to guess it. And so pitching your answer is always interesting. So that's my number 70, Dixit.
My number 70 is quite a recent game, deck builder called Fort. This is the latest release from Leader Games, who we're both fans of, and you'll hear more of later. Kyle Ferrin has some of the most distinct artwork that you'll ever come across. I'd probably put him in my top 3 artists, and Fort shows that yet again. The theme really works for this here. You're each kid's kind of trying to build your own fort and getting the friends to come play with you and help you, and there's like a follow mechanism and a pinching each other's cards, but like the kids enticing them. If you didn't play with them, if you didn't use them that round, then they're available to go play with other people. And so they've managed to kind of intertwine the themes and mechanisms, because deck building's not really a thematic mechanism. It's not something that screams out that you're actually doing anything, but they've managed to throw in a few touches here that do the job. It would potentially be higher if I was in a position to play more with higher player counts. That being able to take other people's unused cards thing seems and feels like it would be far more interesting at higher player counts than the 2-player I've played it at predominantly. But it's still good. It's a lovely, simple take on deck building, but still adds enough kind of flavor and spice that it's not just your basic thing. Fort, number 70.
Yeah, I want to try this one. Great. My number 69 is the first of my former top 10s. I think what you said last time, it's the lowest of your former top 10s. And I hadn't really thought about that until you said it last time. And I was like, oh, I wonder where mine are. And then this screamed out at me as soon as I looked at it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's one. And this is Sushi Go Party.
Now, it's a bit low.
Well, that's the thing. It's a little fall from grace, it's not a fall from grace. I mean, we have to bear in mind what we said right at the top of this thing. Some of this is not seen by how good it is, but how much it hits the table.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember that we're recording this in 2020, when I haven't played with 8 players in I don't know how long. No. And this is one of those games that you just wouldn't play at 2-player. You probably wouldn't even play at 3 and 4. Maybe at 4. But this is a drafting game, a bit like Seven Wonders we mentioned last time. You're given a hand of cards, you pick one, you pass it on. And where I think this succeeds, that Seven Wonders doesn't for me, even though, again, I think critically we'd both say Seven Wonders got the better design, more stuff going on, thinky-wise.
Sure.
Theme-wise, this is brilliant. and so easy to teach, because you say to people, hey, you know, when you're at a sushi bar, and for the record, I've never been to a sushi bar, but everyone's got an idea of what that's like, that, you know, food is going round, and suddenly you're faced with, oh, do I want tempura? Do I want, salmon? Or do I want, whatever it is that's coming around, wasabi? And you pick at it. And so, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. And people pick up a card. And then again, comparing it to Seven Wonders, which possibly isn't fair, but the scoring system, while it's unique for every type of card, is just much more plain. Instead of sciences or something like that in Seven Wonders, where you're like, well, if you get this, but if you get a multiple of those, and then suddenly it's gone. This, you're like, right, so, tempura is worth nothing, but if you have two of them, it's worth 5 points. Okay, yeah, it's plain on the card. It's really simple. So it succeeds really well at being easy to teach, easy theme to get hold of, and really easy to know, oh, actually, I do want to score like that, and I don't want to score like that. And so I've taught this to all sorts of different people. The party version is just more stuff, and you can substitute in, the base Sushi Go. I haven't even played that. Comes with just the same cards every single time, and Sushi Go Party just adds in, exponential numbers of different menu options. And I think you really like this one too.
I do. We'll talk about it later. Not this video even. It's higher than that. But I have actually just ordered Sushi Roll. Because for your very point, at least the last year or so, there's just been no opportunity for a high player count, and Sushi Roll, from what I understand of it, will work much better at lower player counts.
Yeah.
Kind of a dice version. But yeah, no, it's excellent pick. I love this game. Excellent. My number 69 is one of the ones we kind of quibbled on as to whether these should be blocked together or separated. A couple of lists ago, I talked about Among the Stars. This is Fields of Green. I think I know you're slightly different on this, but I think they are distinct enough in some of the key mechanisms that I would put them separately, and clearly, as what we agree on, Fields of Green is the superior game. Thematically, I really don't care for farming games. I know you're more amenable to them than I am. Similarly, space suits me more than you. But because they add a second resource type, that makes the game far more interesting, because there's the animal types, because within each category of card, there's then clear, distinct variations that add that extra layer of thought, bumps it up that little bit more. And then, have you talked about this one yet?
No, and I will do later.
Okay. The 2-player version of the drafting is sublime compared. I didn't mind the Among the Stars when you have to draw an extra card, choose one and discard one. It works. It was just a little bit too much to think about. But turn it into Seven Wonders Duel and suddenly it's a table draft. Much better. So it just kind of improved in every area that I already enjoyed about Among the Stars. It just lifted it all in every area that bit higher, apart from theme.
And again, I will talk about this again, not this video, but much later, because it is a drafting game like Sushi Go, actually, that we've just talked about. And yet, unbelievably, it's best at 2, I think.
Really?
Because it does have that. I don't know why it's so simple that Seven Wonders or whoever has never thought of it before. Put 6 cards on the table. One person picks, first player. The next person picks again. And then you refill. And so everyone gets 6 cards to look at. Look, 6 cards. And there's a bit of first player bias, but you take it in turns. That is so simple. And it works so well. And again, I couldn't believe it that a drafting game could be best at 2-player. That wasn't specifically designed for 2-player. And, we like some other ones of those.
Yes, we'll get to a couple of those. But yeah, Fields of Green.
My number 68 is a game that was designed to be like chess, but what if it didn't have the board? And this is Hive.
Nice.
A brilliant implementation of exactly that question.
That we've all asked.
Well,
I love chess, but if only this just gets in the way.
Cumbersome. No, but instead you are building a hive, interconnected hexes, if black and white. And once you've built something into a hive, you then can't break the hive. You can move the pieces, but they have to stay as complete units. So you do, in effect, build that board. The aim of the game is to encircle, in hex, I guess, the opposite player's queen B token, which is a bit like catching the king in chess, if you like. That's checkmate. And then you have a spider that has to move 3 spaces. You have an ant that can move anywhere as long as it's on the outside of the hive that's being created. You have grasshoppers that can only move in straight lines but can jump over pre-existing bits of the hive in a straight line. And so you can see how some of this is a bit like, oh, that's a bit like the bishop, that's a bit like the knight. And it just takes that sort of classic chess one-on-one. Little Thinky is nowhere near as long as chess. It's definitely not as involved as chess. It's got some cute pieces. They're basically indestructible. They're great for taking to the beach because, it doesn't matter if they get sand on. I don't play this as much as I did at one stage, but it's just a great shelf staple. And like I say, great if you're going to the beach. It's Hive. Check it out.
Great. Another 2-player only small game, probably even faster than Hive, is Hanami Koji. This was my introduction to I Split You Choose, and the first kind of small game to melt my brain, because it's just 4 decisions, 4 moves in the whole game. I have 4, you have 4, and they are identical, but the order is completely different. We are vying for the attention of 7 geishas out in the middle, each that have cards within the deck that are associated with them. And it's I suppose it's not area majority, but it's majority control. I don't know. If I have more of this, say there are 5 of any suit, if I have 3 of them, I win their favor at the end of the round.
Yes.
But the 4 actions that you can do during the entire game are put a card to the side that you'll score later that the other person doesn't know about. Nice. Number 2 is discard 2 cards from the game that no one will score. Nice and simple. And again, your opponent doesn't know what they are. So information emerges, but it's not complete. And then you get the 2 I Split You Choose ones. So number 3 is put out 3 cards face up. Your opponent gets to choose one of them to take from you, and you must keep the other 2. And then the 4 is make 2 sets of 2, and your opponent again gets to choose one of those sets of 2 to put on their scoring side, and you must keep the other. But then they're doing the same thing at the same time. You go back and forth, and so that's so simple. That's such an easy design. Like it's one of those. How did no one think of this before? And all the clues are there. Number 1 is about 1 card. Number 2 is about 2 cards. It's so simple, and yet. Man, trying to figure out what information do I have, because you draw cards each time, so the information, as I say, emerges as it goes along. Which order do you do those actions in? How do you respond to what your opponent's doing? Have they set those sets up so that I'm actually helping them by taking the thing that I want? Do I actually want to take the other thing? That mental battle is great fun. And 5 minutes. It's just a great little package for what it is, Hanami Koji.
My number 67, I own, but it doesn't sit in my game shelf. It actually sits with the kids' toys. Now, we've got lots of kids' games, and I haven't listed a lot of them because they're kids' games. I don't think they really have a place on this list, but a couple of them do. And the first of them to come up is Animal Upon Animal, which is a stacking game. There's a wooden alligator, obviously, and then everyone has the same, I think, 7 animals: monkey, penguin, echidna, I don't know, lizard, whatever, toucan. Toucan's always tricky. You roll a dice, and dice rolling games, that's fine. And you get a 1, a 2, or a special symbol. And with the 1 or a 2, you place 1 or 2 animals onto this alligator or crocodile, and it's the person who gets rid of all their things wins. But they're all different shapes, and they don't really tessellate with each other, but they do kind of sit together. Or there's a sheep. The sheep's helpful because they've got lots of ridges on the back with the fluffy. They're just really evocative, really simple, really tactile. My 4-year-old can play it, and everyone enjoys this. Everyone enjoys this. It's a stacking game. It's a dexterity game. I don't need to tell you much more about it. It just really works, and it's really, really tactile, and it's animal upon animal.
Yeah, it works because it's big, chunky pieces. It's not fine motor skills. It's roughly plop it in the right place. Yeah. And don't be too shaky. Is it snakes? You can elongate the base?
No, that you can elongate the base if you get a picture of the crocodile on the on the thing. Snakes are good. They tessellate pretty well, actually. Yes. They're one of the few that do.
Bumpy ones. Yeah. That's a good one. Okay, let's go to the complete other end of the spectrum. And go with Inish for my 67.
Okay.
This is a drafting game again, pick and pass, but to do war across this beautifully illustrated, well, watercolored, I don't know what the correct word is, kind of different landscapes of
Ireland.
Yeah, of Ireland, of Celtic lore. And the artwork on the cards is mental. Most psychedelic looking thing I've ever seen.
Psychopointillism, I think is.
It very much is. Now, I suspect this will be a game that becomes a higher, sort of terrible English. I suspect this game will climb my list. There you go. Because currently I've only played it 2-player, and everybody that loves it at the full 4-player and will happily play it at 2 and 3. And so I will happily play it because it's great. And they scale it well. There's fewer cards involved, and you pick a slightly different number of them. And it's the tight back and forth battle that I like. We were talking about this last time with Dice Masters. I like head-to-head duels, and this still provides that. It's wacky, not just in its artwork, but its end game triggers are 3 kind of very different things. It's either having having control of 3 distinct tile pieces, or having 3 settlement. I can't remember what they are, but they're not like you can build towards them all. They're very distinct. Disparate is the word I was trying to think of. Things, but production quality is amazing. It's this Matago, the fighting games, which I just haven't played much of. I have backed the Kemet Kickstarter from last year, so I'll get to try another one of those when that arrives. I'm always intrigued by these. I'm not really a war gamer, but I'm always intrigued by these, and because it was drafting, because it was this, again, beautiful aesthetic, bizarre but beautiful.
Yeah,
I was keen on it, and I think you'd spotted it quite cheap, so I decided to pick it up.
Yeah, I really, really want to try this. I can't tell you how little interest I have in Kemet, in Cyclades, or any of those, like you say, dudes on a map games. It's just not where I would sit at all. But the fact that this is drafting, maybe the fact that it's closer to home, it's British Isles, I don't know, but it just, and it doesn't really feel like a war game.
No, it doesn't at all.
Even though there are dudes on the map.
Yeah.
So this one really, really appeals, where a Kemet or Cyclades really doesn't. So I really want to try this one.
So yeah, whenever we're allowed to physically be in the same room again, I'll make sure to try and bring it with me, and we'll see.
The other thing is, those tessellating tiles are crazy.
Oh, aren't they beautiful? I'll have put a picture up on the screen so you've been able to see them. But normally we're used to like hexes or maybe little wavy edged hexes. No, these are like trees. I don't know what they are, but somehow they've designed it perfectly to always go together no matter which way around you put it. Brilliant stuff. My number 67 Inish.
My number 66 we referred to in my 90s, I think, when we talked about a game called Istanbul, where you drop off workers as you go around this variable map. This is like the game of version of that. It's Yokohama.
I wondered if this would come up.
Have you played this?
I haven't, but as soon as you mentioned you liked Istanbul, my question was going to be, but I held my tongue. Do you like Yokohama?
Yeah, sure. I like Yokohama a lot more. I am terrible at it. I don't, because you rightly asked me when we talked about Istanbul, are you good at like dropping off all that stuff? Can you hold that? Because I'm not someone that holds all that sort of stuff in their head. No, I'm
Visual
not.
planning, yeah.
It's really not how I work. So, and this is resource management. It's goal achieving. There's lots of stuff that I really like in a Euro, which is probably why I'm quite happy to play it, but I'm still rubbish at it. It's very similar to Istanbul, but like I say, just more currencies, more points scoring opportunities. If you've played Istanbul, if you played something like that, you'll know what it's going on about. It's just that level up.
Sure.
Graphically is pretty good. Production-wise, they're just basic cubes, so you could ask for a little bit more on that. I think this has been top 100 on BGG a number of times. So it's very, very solid. Yokohama, my number 67. No, 66.
66. My number 66, if it hasn't shown up on your list yet, I believe it will. This is one of the earliest games I played with you. Not quite the earliest, it's not Small World early, but soon after, another Days of Wonder game, Quadropolis. Little town city building type thing. And it does the typical city building stuff with scoring by adjacency. Like if a park is next to this, then is it residences score with parks?
Yeah, residents like parks.
And commercial places need people to shop in them, and other places need power to run them. So it's got a couple of different resource types, and it's a nice, light, simple one. But what it does super well is the draft. It's another table draft, and so you've got all the tiles set up, and it works really well in terms of scaling, because you only flip over the ones with the right number on. So you always draw the same amount, which is good. So the placement is always randomized. But you've got 4 arrows numbered 1 to 4. They are your workers. I forget what the technical word is in the game, but architects, thank you. And you place it in any side of the board you like, and count that number that you've placed along, and that's the one that you take. But then you must also place it in the quadrant or row or column that matches that number,
or floor if you're building apartments,
or floor if you're building the apartments. So it's this super simple game, but just that one decision suddenly adds just this lovely sense of depth. It's not hugely deep, it's not a complex game at all, but it just gives you that, this is a satisfying choice. So it works really well. Days of Wonder production's lovely. It's so good. I played it out, I think, which is why it's kind of settled around here, but undeniably lovely. Quadropolis.
I'm impressed that it's made your top 100, actually, because I could see it, because it's not like write home and tell your parents how brilliant it is, but it does just work. So I'm pleased to see it's here.
Super solid.
Okay, my 65. Wow. Okay, this was one of the earlier games that we had, and we played it basically for an entire day. Probably 8 games in one day, and then every time we get it out, we'd go again. This is Trains from AEG.
Sure.
If you know Dominion, and I'm going to start with Dominion. I know neither of us have really talked about it yet, but it's the daddy of the deck builders. When a friend of mine played this game, he was like, this is how Rio Grande need to take them to court, because this is basically Dominion. Like, all the cards are exactly the same. That's not entirely true. The main difference is the deck building is very, very similar, but you are building on a board, and you are building train tracks, and you're building bridges, and you're building all sorts of things to build routes to think Ticket to Ride, you need to get from this place to this place, and you'll score this many points. Some bits of terrain are harder to cross than others. Like, you might have a plane that is plain, and you just put a normal lay rails card, but you might have then water, and you need a bridge. You might have a tunnel, and all that kind of thing. Here's the interesting thing. Every time you do something industrious, you gain waste into your deck.
Okay.
And then that clogs up your deck. And there's not always in all of the games a way of getting rid of waste. Now there are some because you get trains, cards themselves. You start with a very, very basic train, and they are effectively your currency because when you run a train, you make money off it. That's the franchise system. You buy a better train, you make more money more efficiently, and that's the currency side of it. Some trains that might get dealt out in the 8 cards you'll use at this time will use waste to power their trains. And so it's a way of getting rid of them as well as things. That's pretty handy. Or you might just have to skip a go to bin some waste. I had Trains and Trains Rising Sun, which is standalone sequel but can be mixed together. And so I had a whole box full of cards, loads of tracks that came with it, a boards that is, and I absolutely loved it. Here's the problem, and because you think, why isn't this like top 10? The cards look great and they're well colored and they look a bit like trains and they're well designed, but everything else is hideous. Oh my goodness. Basically, I almost veto any AEG game, even to this day. And I know in the last 2 years they've changed their policy and they're a lot better than they were.
Yeah.
But oh my word. Wow. So I said that the different hexes are different terrain types. Okay, let's think about a game like Scythe. Okay, that's the very far end of it. You've got a board that has been drawn, and then over the top has been laid. Oh, this is a tundra space. This is a village space, and you can see that. No sort of like, let's do a nice picture and then do images over the top. Here's a plain, so that is light green. Here is a river. So that is dark green with blue running through the middle of it. Here is another piece of river with blue running through it. Those bits of river don't necessarily touch one another. Here's the goal section. Here's the world's ugliest star with a badly fonted number in the middle of it. My wife is very, very visuals driven on games. I am nowhere near as much, but oh my goodness, Trains makes me barf. It's just awful. Which is such a shame. And they had a third expansion that I never quite came out because it came in a pack because they did planes, trains, and automobiles. They forced you to buy all 3, so I'm not going to do that. And I just fell out of love with it. I couldn't overlook the hideousness anymore because even though we loved it and we played it out to a degree, but it's the sort of thing like, hey, shall I invite people to play one of my absolute favorite games? No, I can't bring it out because they'll be like, what are you playing? It looked like a war game. It looked like it. Oh man, I can't tell you how terrible it was. And the pieces, they were just cubes. They could have been trains and that kind of thing. So production level, cards were great. Everything else, utterly awful. But so playable and just fixed so many things I didn't like about Dominion and gave you a focus on the board. And love. I know I've just said a whole load of rubbish stuff about it, but I love Trains, number 65.
Don't worry, I have one of the ugliest games ever made in my top 20. I think we'll come to that another time. And most of our games so far have been card driven.
It's interesting.
I think Quadropolis is the only one that hasn't been, and I'm going to continue that with
Animal Upon Animal.
Okay, cool. I'm going to continue that a little bit with Fantasy Realms. This is a hand builder, so like Rummy or something like that, where you start the game having been dealt a set number of cards, and you will end the game with that same number of cards, but what cards they are will change based on picking up and putting down. And this is a wonderful filler. You could play this 3 times in a row, or you could play it once just whilst you're bored waiting for the next thing. And it's all about building combos. There are a number of different suits, all of which are complementary, and they either have bonuses on them. They have like a base power that's how much they're worth, but then either a benefit or some word that might say they cancel out another suit unless you have another card that says it cancels out that cancelling out kind of thing.
Sure.
Or you get 100 points if you have this specific card and this specific card in your hand at the end, which is, pretty basic kind of just rummy evolution. But the thing that clinches it for me, that makes it fascinating, is that the length of the game to some degree is player driven. When you play, you have to draw a card and then you have to discard a card, and you have to discard a card to the middle of the table. And when there are, I think it's 10 cards in the middle of the table, that's the end of the game. But you can draw either from the deck blind or from the middle of the table. So if you draw from the middle of the table, you're not adding any time, or you're not adding any, you're not moving any further to the end of the game. And so you can pace it out a little bit, hope other people put down the cards that you want, so you stall a little bit. Or do I want to push the end of the game? I've got the combo I want, so I can just draw blind and keep just pushing the end of the game, pushing the end of the game. So that balance just works really well for me. It's super simple. It's fantasy. It's in the name. I don't know that you'd care too much about it, but as something to do, and for a relatively wide range of people, it works well. Fantasy Realms.
My number 64, and I'm aware I just took a huge rant on trains, so I'm going to try and be quicker on my next few. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. My number 64 is Meeple Circus. This is a dexterity game that you draft different meeple types, whether it's a seal or whether it's a blue meeple, or it's and now, by the way, a seal as in that kind of seal, whether it's a ball, whether it's a, whatever it is, and then that you're given instructions on how you have to build some sort of meeple tower, like you're at the circus, different things you need to incorporate, and you're up against a timer, and there are 3 rounds, and they keep adding in new rules each time. And I don't tend to play games with apps, because one of my favorite things about games is that they aren't bound by the latest technology. And if that technology ever failed, then I'd still have the game. I also quite like the tactility of it. I didn't mind it in Meeple Circus, partly because a lot of it's just the soundtrack. So going on in the background, which puts you in the vibe a little bit. There's penalties for dropping things. In the 3rd round, there's silly rules like you have to shout or say things or do, and that was the part of it that my wife didn't enjoy quite so much. She doesn't enjoy what she calls public humiliation games, so yeah, it's never been one that we've owned, but we've had a lot of fun playing. At 64 is Meeple Circus.
It's that last round that puts me off completely. I don't enjoy, hey, now be funny. Do this thing.
And neither do I normally. I thought it just seemed to be in keeping with the rest of it.
Sure. I'm going to go a slightly different tack for my 64 into a relatively themeless Euro. And we've had a lot of deck builders. This is something we talked about last time with Dice Masters as a bag builder. This is a game called Dice Settlers, which is...
I want to try it. It's one of those that I've gone, oh, I hear really good things about it, and then again I look at it and go, this looks pretty plain. So convince me.
Aesthetically, I can't.
No, it's fine.
Other than to say some of the art is by the Miko, who's another of my top 3. Yeah. I like him a lot. The dice are good quality. Yeah, being so visually driven as your household is, I know you are less so, but your household, that is a criteria. It's not going to win any awards for that, and I think it will get overlooked a bit because of that. But the core gameplay is just solid. I think that's a thing for this portion of the top 100. These are all super solid games. There are different colored dice, which there are different faces, obviously, but each color leans toward one type of thing, whether that be one of the main resources or one of the main actions that you do with those dice. And it's an action selection thing once you've rolled, and there are ways to re-roll and mitigate, which is always needed in a dice game. So you choose kind of your strategy as to which dice you're buying as you go through. What do I want in my bag? What do I want a higher chance of getting to be able to be better at that action, because instead of I've got 3 explore icons, you're only going to get to explore once. So do you re-roll those and do a weak explore action? Do I use all 3 and get a stronger one and get to look at more tiles to put it out? Because this is the bag building is to drive an area control board growing tile placement thing. But at the same time, you can ignore that to some degree and go after, there's a card driven tech tree. So it's just got quite a few things that I think, nothing's new, nothing's innovative. It's just a nice combination of things, but nothing that stands out. And I think this is why people have overlooked it a bit. But it's a really satisfying experience. And the tech tree, the cards that you get, special powers that if you buy them, can be different every single game. So it just works really well. There's good variety. And obviously the order the tiles come out is always different. And when you gain majority, you either gain a bonus or in-game scoring, whatever it might be. There's just always that little bit extra. Let's go, this is a good game. It's a really good game. Nice. And it's usually relatively cheap for the amount of components that you're going to get. So I check it out. Dice Settlers 64.
Well, staying with dice, my 63 is the dice version of a game that you've mentioned and I haven't yet, and this is Pandemic: The Cure.
So this would go on my list of games I've owned but never played.
Wow. Okay.
And I got rid of before I played them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see now that they've brought out. Oh, what was the King Klinko version that I haven't played?
Rapid Response.
Yes, it's a whole different, timed dice thing. I think this actually, in some ways, is better than base Pandemic because it puts in that element of threat, a bit like we talked about in Forbidden Island. It's a Yahtzee game. It's a roll some dice, pick some dice. Obviously, working cooperatively. There's some just some really nice touches in terms of the Generalist is one of the asymmetric powers in Pandemic, and in the base game it's fairly dull. This person has an extra turn or 2 extra turns or whatever it is. In this one, instead of 6 dice or 5 dice, I can't remember, you then get 8 dice. And suddenly you're like, I can see how that plays out differently. And they've all got custom ones. They've got different colors. They've got different sides. The medic has more cure icons and so on and so forth. So you can see how it all relates. But what it really is a push your luck game. And that works for Pandemic really, really well. Because if you ever roll a whatever the icon is, the skull and crossbones icon, you can't re-roll that. That's going to happen. You're going to get an infection. So every time you roll 6 dice, you have a chance of, a 1 in 6 chance of rolling. And with 6 dice, you're probably going to roll 1 each time. And so, yes, you can re-roll, but is it better just to stick with the fly and cure actions that you've got? And the best thing you can do with that, there's not a full board. It's a little plastic tracker. It's a very good dice adaptation of the base game, and in some ways I actually prefer it to base Pandemic. Obviously you haven't seen base Pandemic yet, so spoiler alert, it's coming up later, because I think that is the superior system generally, but this has just got a nice level of threat and some interesting asymmetric stuff going on. 63, Pandemic: The Cure.
My 63 is my next, possibly last, I'd have to have a look, big box Uwe Rosenberg game. It's not as big a box as Caverna is. This is Glass Road. This is a slightly simpler game than the Agricola level, Feast for Odin level Caverna stuff, where it's so much going on. This one's quite simple because you're just building up buildings on your foresty area. But again, it's a card-driven action selection thing with a follow mechanism. This is something I've really enjoyed recently. What was this, last Christmas I brought this up? Yeah, to try it out, because I've always heard that I would prefer this level of Uwe Rosenberg game, and so it would seem it's higher than the others. He's got these really fascinating resource wheels. Again, for the virtual resources, which we've spoken about before, I like that, where you track the number rather than accumulate the physical things. But then they've got 2, it's like a clock, essentially. Yeah. And when you spend them, it moves what the numbers are. and so it does all the subtraction for you. That's just really cool. But then if the arm is hitting what the furthest resource, obviously you have none, so it won't let you move any further. You can't spend resources you don't have. So it's just really simple, clever things, and it's all just about getting the different tiles to either give you immediate actions, ongoing actions, or endgame scoring. Typical Euro-y stuff. The aesthetic is typical. It's fine. It was just really engaging. And I say that follow mechanism. So we've got a hand of 5, I think it is, but we're only going to play 2 or 3 of them. But then if your opponent plays one and you also have it in your hand, because we've chosen from a deck of 12 possibly, you get to do it as well. So you actually get more actions if you can suss out what you think your opponent wants to do, and you want to do something that they can't guess, so that they don't piggyback off your actions as well. So again, it just adds that extra thought level, that battle of wits that I like. It's solid. That's the thing of this list. Solid. Glass Road.
And sneaky little bit for you viewers, Deep wanted to be a glass blower when he was a young man.
Many years.
Many years. So the theme appeals, no doubt. My 62, we first played with you. We really enjoyed it. We got it. We played it 2 times and traded it straight away. Because it's a great game to play, but we just don't need it in our collection. And it's Takinoko. This is a game about gardening bamboo until the emperor's favorite panda comes and eats it, and the gardener gets mad about it. And I don't know, there's a whole story. There's a little sort of like manga comic in the beginning, isn't there? It's lovely little production, and production-wise, really nice. Apart from maybe the just blue sticks for the water stuff, which are very functional, they work. But the bits of bamboo in different colors, they're really nice. The panda itself is very nice. The tiles are good quality. And there's this interesting mechanic where you roll the dice, and it tells you sort of how you're going to play each time, by what weather's going to happen, and you have 2 actions each turn. It's all very solid, very lovely. Maybe like you said, this section is solid games. I've got absolutely nothing against this. It didn't have the depth, it didn't have the heft to stay in our collection. But if anyone said to me, "Hey, should we play Takinoko?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it's great. It's a great game." My 62.
My 62 is all about heft. This is one of the physically largest games I've ever owned. I don't own it anymore. This is, I think, still the #1 ranked game on Board Game Geek. This is Gloomhaven. This is so many people's #1 or kind of top 5 kind of game. And it's down here for a couple of reasons, because I did really enjoy it. I'd never played really a dungeon crawler before. I'm not huge on legacy games, I'll be honest, but I do love narrative. And Gloomhaven presents this huge kind of 100-hour at least kind of experience to go through with friends. But the narrative is a little lacking. They're addressing that in the newer sequel, Frosthaven, where it felt a bit repetitive. So I'm told I only did about 5 or 6 missions. But the core hand management design is incredible. It really is. I understand everybody's love of the game, but I was playing it mostly solo. I don't like two-handing when I'm playing solo. I like just doing my thing, maybe with a side thing, but not control 2 distinct hands. That just feels like you've got no friends in just rubbing it in. And to be honest, I was a little overwhelmed by how much was there. I'm not going to get through all of that content. It's nice to have it, but I'm never going to get through it. So I'm super keen on Jaws of the Lion, which came out recently, which is just a smaller, not bit of Gloomhaven. It's a distinct story. They've come up with new missions, new characters, all this stuff, but it's just a much smaller version. There's only 4 characters as opposed to like the 16 possible ones that come in Gloomhaven. The maps are now in a book rather than all these tiles you've got to fit through. The box literally was probably the size of all of this.
Yeah.
And so heavy. It's great. I was talking about this last time when we were talking about big games. I get it. I appreciate it. And I did really enjoy it, but it was too much for me. Weirdly, I want a smaller experience, and hopefully I'll get that from Jaws of the Lion, and it might pick it higher. But 62, Gloomhaven.
And it's worth saying at this point, this won't turn up on my list because I've not played it, and I don't think anything would ever get me to play. Well, if I was in a game cafe and someone, hey, do you want to play? Sure, that's fine. I don't care for dungeon crawling. I don't care for the graphical style. I don't really want to dig through all that stuff. I just want a game. I just want to play a game, and I don't want to do all the extra bump, as well as the theme and stuff. Not really big for me and my wife. So, that said,
you would enjoy the system.
I'm sure I would, and also, how much stuff is in there? It's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
it's got to be commended. Isaac Childress, well done. But no, thank you.
And twice, he's done it all again with Frosthaven.
Yeah.
And as much as it's £100 game, it's some of the best value if you're going to play all of it. If you don't, like I didn't, I got most of my money back. I probably paid for what I played.
Yeah.
If you're going to get your money out of it, it's brilliant value.
Right. My number 61, speaking of getting money, value for money, is your game, but I'm playing it, but not treading over any of your toes, because this is Charterstone. This is Stonemaier's entry into the legacy world, and what they did really well, that I've alluded to, is they provide a recharge pack, so you can do the whole thing all over again. I have to be very clear at this point, I haven't finished it. I think we've done 6 games of maybe 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
10 or 12.
We were working through it quite happily. The pandemic hit. My brother and sister-in-law, who we were playing with, Cheryl's family, we just weren't able to see them anymore. And then we moved to a different city. So it didn't work out. But there were lots of things to really enjoy about it. Art style is great. The sense of exploration is great. You get so sidetracked into opening crates and not into doing what you should. I wonder what's in there. It's just more of the same types of cards you've seen the whole thing, but you don't know. There might be something new. It's very exciting.
It might be new minions. That's always the exciting thing.
Well, I didn't want to get that spoiler away. They capture really well what's really good about legacy games, which is that sense of a new thing. Oh, that's fun. And there's some cheeky surprises with the box and a couple of other things that are, lots of really fun. There's some great mechanics in there, worker bumping and
Grande.
Grande working, and then you do a really good job of building your own space over the game of like what I'm really good at, because I've built these stickers up near me of my little area, and then you get to branch out as you go along. And even I said, you get the recharge pack. The base game comes with a 2-sided board, so you when you get to the end of it, you will have 2 complete games. And the thing that's particularly unique about Charterstone, I think the Clank one does this, I don't know, but not many of them, when you get to the end of the game, is it playable as itself. In theory, you can play to the end of Pandemic Legacy, whichever series, the December game over and over again. Having played a couple of those, I don't know why you'd want to. That's not the point of them. Whereas almost this gets you to that point and you go, that I hear, because I haven't actually finished it, but I can see where it's going. That's a really solid worker placement game. The reality is I don't think we're going to finish it. Having stopped playing it for 8, 9, 10 months, there's not really the drive to complete it. And I think this is part of the problem with legacy games generally. Unless you really want to finish it, it does become a bit of a bind. The story's barely there. There's some interesting stuff around, like an adventure book thing. Do you want to choose the good choice and the bad choice and see what happens, kind of thing? It's fine. but it is a really solid worker placement game, worker bumping game, grande working game. Lots of nice mechanics in there that, you know, this is a tricky one, actually. I've never had to talk around an issue like, what about the tiny cubes? Shh. You know, there's lots of really good stuff in there. I just don't think we want to finish that legacy game particularly.
Sure, but as you said, there's the option that if I show up, we flip the board to my thing and we just play a game of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would know how to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. My 61 is also a worker placement game. This uses time as a resource. This is Tzolk'in, which I mentioned last time because it's one of the same designers as one of the games I was talking about before. This is an absurd production with lots of cogs on the board, all interlocked, and every round you turn the central cog a certain number of times. It's slightly different depending on, you can force it to go more, and that in turn moves all the external cogs, but you've placed your workers on the external cogs, and so as they move on, the actions that you would get when you pull them back get better and better and better. But if you don't have any workers on your turn, you have to pull things back. You have to place or pull every turn. And so that balance of how long can I wait? Can I push my luck? Can I get the better thing? Oh, no, I can't. I have to pull something, but fine, I'll take that back. Do I put two on the same track so that I'm going to get some really good things? It's just a very clever take on worker placement. I think it would be higher, but it's got such a steep curve that every time I sit down to it, I almost have to relearn it. Obviously, I'm more familiar with it and go, oh yeah, yes, of course. Oh yes, it's that thing. But it's not great. Let's sit down and immediately start playing. Yeah. So that holds it back a bit. But at 61, it's a great game. Yeah, Tzolk'in.
It's one that I've never played, and I think that complexity issue is one that keeps me away from it. There's a part of me that's like, no, I could play every heavy Euro game in the world.
And playing it is super smooth. Once you get it, it's intertwined beautifully.
Yeah, but having played quite a lot of Euros and all sorts of other stuff as well, I have started to go. I do have a level, and it is medium to heavy. It's not heavy. So yeah, I think if someone sat me down and taught it, I think I'd find this fascinating.
Yeah,
but I've never quite gone, let's add that to the wish list.
No, I'm totally with you. I totally get that. Well, an interesting array of games this time on all spectrums, Gloomhaven down to Animal Upon Animal. I love it. I love the breadth of games that exist. There's thousands and thousands of games, and so we've played a few hundred of them between us, and so these are just the best of those. So all of these are great games, whether they're simple for children or for new people or people that don't care about heavy games. I always talk about for new people as if that's a bad thing. It's not. Play Ticket to Ride forever. It's amazing. Play Animal on Pan Animal forever. It's amazing. Do that kind of thing. And if you want to go into the deep dark world of Gloomhaven, do that. That's an option for you. And I think it's amazing. Rick doesn't. That's fine. But all of these things we'll talk about more as we go along. Another 60 of them, in fact. But we'll come to that another time. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to, you can subscribe to the channel so you stay updated when all these new videos come out, and hit the bell icon so you stay updated when they do. You get an alert. It's nice and handy. And in between, do subscribe to social media. Just search Win Some Lose Some More. You'll find me on there. You can follow. Until next time, that's it. I've been Dieter. He's been Rick. One day you'll get to say your own name. Maybe you did it last time. Did you do it last time?
I don't care.
No one cares.